The NorthStar community. It's the weekend before Thanksgiving. So this is a time for us to really think a lot about the number one tool for recovery is gratitude. The thankfulness, the intentional gratitude of seeing the good things in our lives. Because a lot of times when we're going through addiction, let's be honest, it's hard sometimes to find things to be happy about. We all got our problems. We all got our frustrations. We all got the things that hit us hard. And if we're acting out in our addictive thinking and our addictive behaviors, we certainly are having issues in our lives. But if you're here watching this, I assume that you're either in recovery or you want to be in recovery. And we just have to keep finding ways to move forward. As we remember over and over, addiction recovery is a process. So just a reminder again, we see addiction in three categories. The first is substance abuse and addiction. Those are everybody kind of understands that one. The other one is compulsive behaviors, where we just engage in destructive, ongoing, too often, too much, whatever words you want to use, behaviors that create problems for us. Sometimes they can even be good behaviors we do, but they become too strong. If I'm on social media to stay informed and to communicate with friends, that's one thing. But if we get on there for hours at a time and we're looking for other people to make us feel bad about ourselves, or we're worried, or we're focused on likes, or we get caught up in all the extreme thinking and extreme feelings about things on there, and it becomes where it becomes we have to do it, and it just keeps continuing to harm us, then that becomes an addiction. And of course, the other one is people. We get addicted to people. We give ourselves up. We give our power over to them, or the other way around. We try to control everything, and we try to do all the things we can to make relationships work. The problem is, that sounds good, but the problem is oftentimes we're giving ourselves up, because the whole point of addiction in many ways is that we loathe ourselves. And so if we're in relationships, we're not going to behave. We're not going to do the right things. We're going to do a lot of things destructively and become real problems for us. And so, as I always kind of humorously say, if you're in your 33rd broken relationship, it's probably time for you to look at things. And the other thing is that with addiction recovery, one of the most courageous acts we can do is to get toxic people out of our lives. Now, I hope that you're not that toxic person for others, but sometimes we are. And it's not because you're bad or they're bad. It's just the two of us, whoever those people are, we just don't do well together. So what we're going to talk about today is kind of the yin yang of this. Is the one side of this, we talk about our frustrations as addicts. It's because we become way too frustrated. But on the other side, we're going to look at it as gratitude, and that's how we get out of all this. So if you want, addiction begins with pain and it ends with pain. And that's how we get better. Russell Brand has that quote, and I really think he's right about that. So much of our addictive behavior is built around us trying to avoid the emotional pain in our lives. And then it takes an enormous amount of pain for us to want to change. And that's kind of where we're at. So the frustrations of growth, this is Dr. Tversky's book again. It has a lot about this. And, so we talked about this in NorthStar the other day. Think of a time in your life where pain made you a better person. I can certainly think of a few. In my case, being way overly giving myself up in relationships, over functioning, being depressed, all those things, none of it worked. And so I can learn from those. And what it does, it makes me more empathetic now as I work with other people. When I see other people making mistakes, I don't look at them like, how could you do this? I certainly understand that. And it makes me much more available to them in the right ways. But let me tell you, I was in pain. There was a couple times, very painful times in my life. But I was wise enough to move forward and to make things work. But if you think about it, For many of us, we've had lots of difficult experiences in our life. I think everybody's had trauma. Everybody's had abandonment. It's what we choose to do with it. And as we keep telling over and over in here, is that we can't turn the clock back. There's nothing we can do to turn this clock back to fix what happened in the past. In fact, if we did, it probably wouldn't work anyway, and it would make us worse. The fact is, addiction recovery is a process. It takes time, and it has to take time. It's not sudden. If it was, as we know, it doesn't work. So I'm going to read Psalms 107, message version here. Oh, thank God, He's so good. His love never runs out. All you set free by God, tell the world. Tell how He freed you from oppression, then rounded you up from all over the place, from the four winds, from the seven seas. Some of you wandered for years in the desert, looking but not finding a good place to live. Half starved and parched with thirst, staggering and stumbling on the brink of exhaustion. Then, in your desperate condition, you called out to God. He got you out in the nick of time. He put your feet on a wonderful road, then took you straight to a good place to live. So thank God for His marvelous love, for His miracle mercy to the children He loves. He poured great draughts of water down parched throats, and the starved and hungry got plenty to eat. The starved and hungry got plenty of spiritual food. That's how we need to see this. But God is here for us. That should be the greatest and most wonderful gratitude we have. Over and over, remind us that there's nothing you've done that's bigger or worse than God's grace. What a beautiful concept if you think about it. There's nothing you have to do for God except accept His love. That's all you got to do. And I know we get some distorted views from people in the religious world, but the fact is Jesus came here. He is here and He is alive today, and He loves you. And for many of us, we've had trauma and abandonment in our lives. Many of you had trauma and abandonment at home. I mean, when you're kids. So sometimes it's a little hard for you to understand this concept of a Father who loves you. But God is not us. He's much bigger than that. And the problem is that when we're young and we have a lot of trauma in our lives, or even, well, anytime when we have trauma in our lives or abandonment, it really hurts our coping behaviors. It doesn't help us to become more effective in how we live and how we handle things. And one of the things I always kid addicts about is, you're not the most depressed. You're not the most frustrated. You're not the one with the worst, most difficult times in your life. There's others with more. But when we're addicted, we really do get frustrated, and we just haven't been taught how to cope with it, and it just it just drives us insane, and we just feel like the world's stacked against us. I quit drinking 3 weeks ago, and now the tires on my van are bad, and they're thinking about I might lose my job, and all these things. You just keep all these things just pile up on us. But the fact is, all these things pile up on all of us. We all face things. Life's tough. I mean, it really is. And that's a lot of times why we became addicted in the first place, was to avoid some of that pain. So I'm going to read Tversky's quote here. He says, true recovery from addiction means more than simple abstinence. It means relinquishing the counterproductive thought products of addictive thinking and adopting a healthy thinking system. So if you're walking around feeling totally frustrated, feeling like the world's stacked against you, it's probably not true. I always tell people, whenever you start hearing yourself speak in absolutes, like always, never, every time, everyone, those are not real. And addictive thinking involves a distortion of perception where we see major events or series of events that we question our validity of those perceptions, just one thing after another. But frustration is always going to be in our life. It's how we'd handle it. There will always be reasons for us to act out. There will always be reasons for us to drink. There will always be reasons for us to get on social media too long. There will always be reasons for us to gamble. There will always be reasons for us to eat too much. There will always be reasons for us to overly involve ourselves in dysfunctional relationships. Those are not the cause of our addiction and our problems, but they keep us in that world. So what we have to realize is we just haven't learned how to navigate through some of this stuff. Think about the if only thinking of regret. If only things could or should be different than they are. If only this had happened. If only this hadn't happened. I regret, but you know what? Again, if only nothing. We can't turn the clock back. I don't know how to say it to us. Life has challenges. We have series of challenges. We have hurdles, and sometimes when we get over one hurdle, two more hurdles come up, and we just see that as unusual when we're addicted. When the fact is, that's what life is. We take care of these things we were supposed to do. Maybe we needed to go to court. Maybe we needed to take care of this issue or this problem, and then we did that. Well, then another one pops up. Well, we take care of that, and then another. There's always going to be stuff going on. And as addictive thinkers, we see ongoing life frustrations as unusual, like we're being singled out and unjustly harassed and stuff. And we point out that this intolerable series of problems are just too much for us to cope with. It's just one thing after another, never a moment of peace, always something. You hear again the absolute thinking. But here's the thing. This stuff happens to everybody. Like I just said, we all have stuff. It just is addicts, we're not aware of that. And we see it as no one else could possibly be subject to such terrible stresses and problems. And others around us, we hear your frustrations, we hear your fears, and sometimes we want to over function in that, or we don't want to do anything. But the fact is that, and if we're not careful, we can get caught into believing addicts and all their problems, and we may even want to try to help fix them and maybe help them think differently. And sometimes when we hear others talk about all their problems, it almost becomes too much for us to bear. I know that there's sometimes I will be hearing someone tell their story, and I start getting stressed about their life because of how exhausting it sounds and how tough it sounds. And I have to remind myself to back out of that, because the fact is, yeah, they got it tough, but so does everyone else. And they probably don't have it all that much tougher than everyone else. Now, please understand, there are some of us out here who have major stories that if you're in the middle of it, you have every right to feel sad. You have every right to feel lost. You have every right to feel angry. All those things. So make sure you understand I'm not talking about that. But I am talking about the ongoing life, just life in general. That's where we see things much bigger than they are. And the other problem is, let's be honest, when we're addicted, when we're spending all of our time online, or we're over functioning in people's lives, or we're using substances, we don't get much done. And things get away from us, and we get behind it. We're going to do it tomorrow, and we should have done it yesterday, and all that stuff. These things pile up on us. We have to take a regular approach to all this stuff. But if we're busy feeling sorry for ourselves like the world's against us, we may not do some of those. And so we have to understand, we say this over and over again, recovery is growth. And we have to accept life on its own terms. There's a great saying out there, if it's between you and the world, bet on the world. We have to, I think there's a prayer out there somewhere that talks about we have to accept the things we cannot change and change the things we can, and have the knowledge of no difference, right? So we have to accept our powerlessness in some ways, because we don't have power over everything, but we do have power over some things. And if we're walking around absolutely totally frustrated all the time, we're not going to do anything about anything. So just step back and think about the things you can do that you have some power over. And the other thing is, surrender a lot of this over to God. We were talking about this in NorthStar the other day. The number of people I know who came into my office so sad and so broken and so lonely. There was no one out there for them. They were trying to find someone to be with, all these things. And when they stopped looking, when they stopped trying so hard, when they just stepped back and took care of themselves and got healthier, the number of times I've seen people find other people in their lives that made them so much more happy, and they were happy with someone else. It's pretty astounding. People I've heard talk about their finances are a wreck, and when they stopped worrying about it so much, got healthier, did the right things, turned it over to God, things got better. It's easy to say, hard to do, but the plan is really not that hard. If you'll turn your life and will over and accept God and trust Him, that He will help you. When you're in the right place, He will help you. And the other part about addiction is we have to start growing. For many of us, when we get addicted at 15, 16 years old, in many ways we emotionally start growing at that point. And so we got some making up to do. But we can do it. and I see many people do it as well. I love this quote that Dr. Tversky quotes an addict that said, "They told me that if I stopped drinking, things would get better. Well, they were wrong. Things did not get better. I got better." So a lot of our problems disappear when we start behaving ourselves and we quit being so addictive, when we quit looking at the world against us. But it takes time, and that's what's so hard about this. We do the right things. We accept step one, step two, step three. I can't, he can, so we let him. And there's still a lot of problems, but that's how it works. We have problems in our finances, our health, our children, relationships, you name it. There's so many problems. A lot of times, if we're just coming out of our major addictive episodes, there's going to be a lot of those. But be patient. You got to stop. You have to do the right things. You have to get yourself in a group. You have to talk about things. You have to deal with things, and it will fix itself. I can think of so many people who attend our NorthStar group that were in such disarray when they first came, and now they're having a pretty good life. They may not admit to it, but they're having a pretty good life. At least they're getting a lot of glimpses of what a rich, full, meaningful life looks like. And there's beauty in recovery. I think that's why I love working in recovery. It helps me so much, but also others. Recovering addicts begin to recognize our growing and emerging strengths to cope with current realities. In addition, if we need help to deal with problems, we have learned where to find help and how to accept help. Didn't do that when we were addicted. It's a process. It's a process. It's a process. No one graduates from recovery. We just get better and better. And so we know the drill. Call healthy people. Get in support groups. Share with others when you're in the support groups. Don't sit there and be surly. And follow recommendations that you hear from other people who have been through what you've been through. I know it's hard for us to accept this, but we're not that unique. So many of the problems and stuff we do, lots of us have done it. It's just we think we're the only ones that have done it. But here's your chance, And addictive, and this is Dr. Tversky again, addictive thinkers may think they deserve rest after their strenuous effort in opening recovery, but this kind of thinking can lead to relapse. Hurdles in the path are inevitable, and it is realistic to expect them in recovery. Thus, you're going to have frustrations. See it as part of life. And so we talk about gratitude, and we're here getting into Thanksgiving week. Without a question, when we can see gratitude as a major tool of recovery, we are on our way. Make it your goal every night to sit down. Don't think it. You got to write it down. Get a journal, get a good pen, and write down 3 things you're grateful for today. If you start doing this, life will start turning for you because you'll start seeing it. Now, granted, there are days when it's hard to see things to be grateful for, but there are many things to be grateful for. So many things. Your health, ability to hear, ability to see. Maybe you didn't use today. Maybe you didn't act out addictively today. These are things to be grateful for. Maybe someone was kind to you. Dr. Archer from Harvard University has a list of 5 things he suggests that you do for intentional gratitude in your journals. One is write down 3 things you're grateful for. The second one is write down something good that happened today. And again, I understand there are times when that's tough. And then the other is write on your prayer. Write down what you did for prayer. Write down what you did for exercise. And then write down 1 random act of kindness that you did. A random act of kindness will do more for your life to help you feel grateful and appreciative. So I'm going to read this real fast. Philippians 4, and then in conclusion. Celebrate God all day, every day. I mean, revel in Him. Make it as clear as you can to all you meet that they're on your side. Working with them and not against them. Help them see that the Master is about to arrive. He could show up any minute. Don't fret or worry. Instead of worrying, pray. Let petitions and praises shape your worries into prayers, letting God know your concerns. Before you know it, a sense of God's wholeness, everything coming together for good, will come and settle you down. It's wonderful what happens when Christ displaces worry at the center of your life. That's pretty good. So try to pray a little bit more. Try to write down your intentional gratitudes. Try to get yourself to sport meetings. Try to get healthy people in your life, and things will get better for you. And maybe frustrations won't be so high. So we always close our NorthStar service with prayer of serenity. So let's go ahead and do that. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace. Taking, as Jesus did, the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that Jesus will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever the next. Amen. Again, thank you for joining me today. NorthStar Community meets on Wednesdays at 6:30, Fridays at 6:30, and Sunday mornings at 9 o'clock. So I hope to see you one time, and if you're not local, you can always call me or email me. You can email me at csimpson@wgva.church. You can call me at 804-746-5081. Again, have a great Thanksgiving. Have a beautiful Thanksgiving. And thanks for joining today.
Ever since then,
Yes.
we just been doing it out there. One year through, she thought she had found a